What is the creepiest disappearance case that you know about? Story 1. Brandon Lawson. He ran out of gas on the highway in the middle of the night and called his brother to come help him. Shortly after, he called 911 and reported that someone had chased him into the woods and that he needed police. Eventually, his brother and one police officer arrive at the scene and find his truck abandoned but no sign of Brandon. Brandon calls his brother and says he's bleeding and is 10 minutes away from his truck. That was the last anyone ever heard from him, and searches of the area turned up empty. Story 2. The Jameson family. The Jameson family, 2 adults, 1 young daughter, was interested in purchasing a plot of land in Oklahoma. They drive out in their pickup truck to check it out. Truck is later found abandoned. $32,000 cash found in truck, along with the Jamesons' IDs, wallets, mobile phones, and a GPS. The family dog was also left in the truck and was extremely malnourished. A camera is discovered. The final picture was of their daughter, 6-year-old Madison, who looks somewhat distressed. Security footage is uncovered, with the family appearing trance-like and not speaking to one another. The Jameson skeletal remains are found years later, dumped less than 3 miles from where the pickup truck was originally discovered. Remains show no signs of struggle. Story 3. The disappearance of Susan Powell. It's a wild story. Husband and wife, with 2 young sons, have a bad marriage. He's abusive and controlling, plus at one point they had to move because the husband's father was in love with the wife. Things get so bad she starts fearing for her life. Then one night the whole family disappears, only to have the husband come back a few days later saying that he and the boys went camping and he had no idea where the wife was. As the investigation into what happened to the wife goes on, the husband acts more and more suspiciously, eventually moving with the kids to live with his father that they moved away from in the first place, but then lost custody of the kids because the father got caught with a bunch of child and hundreds of creeper shots of Susan. Finally, during a supervised visit, the husband grabs his sons from the social worker, holes himself up inside his house, and then blows it up, killing himself and both the boys. And all the while, they never solved the mystery of what happened to Susan Powell, and she is still listed as missing, although presumed dead and dumped somewhere by the husband. It's a sad, crazy tale. Story 4. The Sodder children disappearance. On Christmas Eve, December 24, 1945, a fire destroyed the Sodder home in Fayetteville, West Virginia. At the time, it was occupied by George Sodder, his wife Jenny, and 9 of their 10 children. During the fire, George, Jenny, and 4 of the 9 children escaped. The bodies of the other 5 children have never been found. The fire was blamed on faulty wiring. However, one of the jurors involved in the inquest had, at one point, threatened George Sodder, saying his house would be burned and his children destroyed. The Sodders continued to question the official findings about the fire. They wondered why, if it had been caused by an electrical problem, the family's Christmas lights had remained on throughout the fire's early stages, when the power should have gone out. A telephone repairman told the Sodders that the house's phone line had not been burned through in the fire, as they had initially thought, but cut by someone who had been willing and able to climb 14 feet up the pole. A missing ladder belonging to the Sodders was found at the bottom of an embankment soon after the incident. A man whom neighbors had seen stealing a block and tackle from the property around the time of the fire was identified and arrested. He admitted to the theft, and claimed he had been the one who cut the phone line, thinking it was a power line, but denied having anything to do with the fire. However, no record identifying him exists, and why he would have wanted to cut any utility lines to the Sodder house while stealing the block and tackle has never been explained. Jenny Sodder also had trouble accepting Morris's belief that all traces of the children's bodies had been burned completely in the fire. Many of the household appliances had been found, still recognizable, in the ash. A local crematorium supported her theory. The truck's failure to start was also considered. George Sodder believed they had been tampered with, perhaps by the same man who stole the block and tackle and cut the phone line. The only bone fragments ever found on the site were a few human vertebrae fragments, although these were confirmed to have never been exposed to fire. Story 5. In about 1971, a lady in Boca Raton reported her daughter missing. Her boyfriend was also missing along with his van. At some point over the years, she hired private detectives to look for the two. At one point, she was told they were living in San Francisco. She was once told her daughter had a child. She never could understand why her daughter broke off contact and continued to look for her daughter. Along the streets in South Florida, there are usually drainage canals that drain the Everglades to the ocean. Some are quite deep. In about 2000, they dredged a canal not far from her house and found the van. Daughter and boyfriend were both inside. All those years they were just down the street. At least she had closure. Story 6. Dorothy Jane Scott. Young divorced mom working at a head shop. One day at a meeting, a coworker falls ill, so Dorothy and another coworker take him to the hospital. It is found that he has a black widow bite. Following his treatment, Dorothy goes to get the car. When the coworkers make it outside, they see Dorothy's car speeding towards them. She doesn't stop, and that is the last time anyone sees her. The next day, her car is found torched, but she is nowhere to be found. Over the next few years, her parents start receiving taunting phone calls. Calls asking if Dorothy is home, a call claiming to know where she is, and so on. 4 years later, a construction worker finds charred bones next to a highway. Upon forensic investigation, it is learned that they are canine bones and the bones of Dorothy Jane Scott. It is deducted that they had been there for 2 years. Story 7. Angela Hammond. While driving home, Angela Hammond stops at a phone booth to call her fiancé Rob and describes a creepy-looking man in a pickup truck in the parking lot. Her fiancé suddenly hears Angela scream and drives into town to check on her. He passes by a pickup truck and sees Angela struggling with an unidentified man, but after attempting a pursuit, the transmission on his truck gives out, and this is the last anyone ever sees of Angela. She still hasn't been found and went missing in 1991. Story 8. Rico Harris. He was a massive 6 feet 9 inches former Harlem Globetrotter basketball player who had drug issues earlier in his life, but had made a full recovery and was getting his life back on track. He was driving along California's Interstate I-5, from his home in Southern California to Seattle, to live with his girlfriend. He was somewhere just north of Sacramento, exhausted, and told his girlfriend over the phone that he wanted to check out the mountains. All calls stopped since then. His car was found a couple days later by a patrolman near a rest stop in the mountains. A massive search was launched. No signs of him. The strangest part? A driver later reported seeing a massive 6 feet 9 inches individual wandering down the highway, just a mile from where the car was found a week later. A search was relaunched. Massive size 17 footprints were found in the ground that were not there before. They were getting very close, and then nothing. No trace, no body, nothing. Where did Rico go the first time he disappeared? Where was he for an entire week? And where did he disappear to again? The fact that someone could disappear twice is what makes this so damn mystifying to me. Story 9. The Stacey Harris Disappearance. It was in the afternoon on July 17, 1981, when a group of 6, plus Harris and her father, rode into Sunrise High Sierra Camp on horseback. The camp sits 9,400 feet above sea level and is regarded for its historic significance, being the final stop in Yosemite's Mountain Chalet Loop. It was built in 1961 to make backcountry an alluring destination for tourists, offering stunning wilderness vistas but also creature comforts like showers and reasonably comfy beds. Harris told her father that she wanted to photograph a nearby lake. It wasn't terribly far, just over a bluff. He declined to accompany his daughter, 14 at the time, but an elderly man from their group would tag along. At some point, the 77-year-old man grew tired and sat down to rest. Harris, seemingly determined to reach the water, trekked onward. Back at the camp, the group's tour guide remembered noticing her from afar. She was standing on a rock about 50 yards south of the trail. According to a summary of her official cold case file, that was the last time anyone saw Harris, or the last time anyone is known to have seen her. She vanished that day, without a trace, leaving only her camera lens behind.